WWE has a reputation for having a lot of turnover every year. A number of superstars are let go on an annual basis for cost-cutting reasons or just because the company wants to let go of some of its dead weight. But sometimes, WWE comes within an inch of axing someone and then steps back. So let's check out 10 wrestlers WWE almost fired. The Shield is one of the most dominant factions of all time. All three members went on to have magnificent solo careers, with Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose all being Grand Slam champions. Dean Ambrose is done with WWE, having made his final appearance in the company on the post-WrestleMania episode of Raw, which means it is going to be a long time before we can see a Shield reunion. However, there could have been a case where the Shield did not exist, with Seth Rollins almost being fired by the company during his time in developmental. Before making it in WWE as the Architect and the Beast Slayer, Seth Rollins was just another fresh-faced indie star hoping to make it big in the company. Reports suggest that Rollins managed to rub people the wrong way in both FCW and NXT. Things got so bad that it seems like the former ROH star would have to head back to the indies before getting a proper shot in the big leagues. But Triple H saw something special in Rollins, and according to the man himself, a sit-down chat with the cerebral assassin pretty much saved his career. There is no doubt that Rollins is a special talent, and thankfully Triple H saw that too, so the Beast Slayer could live to fight another day. A little while after the make or break talk with Triple H, Rollins debuted on the main roster as a part of the Shield. If you're ever thinking about doing pretty much the worst thing you can do as a rookie in WWE, just take a page out of Daniel Puder's book. In the 4th Tough Enough competition, Kurt Angle stepped into the ring on November 4th episode of SmackDown back in 2004 and challenged the finalists to a little go-around. The second man to step into the ring was Daniel Puder. Within moments, he locked Angle in a Kimura lock. For those unfamiliar with the move, it can quite easily break someone's arm, and most MMA fighters usually tap out when put in the lock. For obvious reasons, Angle could not tap out to an absolute nobody on SmackDown, but if the two hadn't been separated when they were, Angle probably would have needed surgery. The unscripted nature of the segment was risky to begin with, but with the rookie almost putting the Olympic medalist on the shelf, there was no doubt that he would pay for stepping out of line. That's exactly what happened. Ideally, he should have been fired on the spot, but instead WWE decided to punish him at the Royal Rumble, where a bunch of veterans took turns humiliating the upstart with a number of very stiff strikes. The next year, he was released as a part of a cost-cutting move, so even if he wasn't fired immediately, it did happen eventually. In her short time as a wrestler for WWE, Paige became one of the most respected and decorated stars in the business. Wrestling ran through her blood, and Paige even had a movie made about her life. Regardless of how well she did in the ring, her relationship was quite rocky with WWE. While dealing with her injury, Paige embarked on an ill-advised relationship with Alberto Del Rio. WWE was less than fond, and did quite a bit to try and keep the two apart, but no matter what, it wasn't enough. The problems kept piling up as she violated the wellness policy, had a number of explicit photos leaked, and had a public falling out with Del Rio. For a while, it seemed that even if Paige makes it back to the ring, her return wouldn't have taken place in a WWE ring. Thankfully, her relationship with the company got better, and she was allowed to return as a SmackDown GM, even after announcing her retirement. She still shows up on WWE programming every now and then, but if things had continued on the path that they had been when she was with Del Rio, there is no doubt that she would have been fired. John Cena was the face of WWE for a long time and is without a doubt one of the biggest stars that had been churned out since the company went PG. It's practically impossible to think of anyone who could have replaced him as the top dog in the company. Just try and imagine someone like Batista being the face and preaching to little kids. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Turns out Cena was almost fired by WWE just 2 months into his main roster career. After a successful run in OVW that positioned him for greatness, he transitioned to the main roster way too early. Cena was on the verge of being fired in 2002, and if it hadn't been for Stephanie, the leader of the C Nation would have been plying his trade elsewhere. The princess of WWE took a liking to Cena and was a fan of his in-ring skills and micability, so the company decided to give him a second chance. Thank God she did, because Cena served the company admirably, winning title after title, making history on a regular basis along the way. It is practically impossible to think that Triple H would ever be in a position to be fired. This is a man notorious for playing backstage politics, and today he's in line to take over the company. Back in the 90s, things were a little bit different. He was just another wrestler on the roster and got himself into some trouble for the infamous curtain call scene. Back when kayfabe was a much bigger deal, Scott Hall and Shawn Michaels faced off against Triple H and Kevin Nash at Madison Square Garden. After the match, all 4 men of the Clique hugged it out. Some people caught the moment on camera as kayfabe was called into question. With Hall and Nash on their way out and Michaels the top champion, Triple H ended up feeling the wrath. Triple H was essentially buried and didn't win a match for a long time. In retrospect, he got off easy because a lot of superstars would have simply been fired. Lio Rush is only 24, but it feels like he's been around in WWE for a bit. Rush's run in NXT was painfully short as he was pulled from programming towards the end of October for making fun of Emma being released. A comment on Twitter did not go over well with backstage officials whatsoever, as he was pulled from events for a month and it seems like the former CZW World Champion would be fired. Rush got lucky though, as he returned to NXT and today he is featured prominently on Raw. Rush doesn't wrestle nearly as much as he should, but every time he does, he proves that not only is he great on the mic, but he is no slouch in the ring. Though, if we're being honest, the person to benefit the most from Rush sticking around was Bobby Lashley.
I know you like money. Don't you like money?
You do realize I'm working out, right?
Look, I'm just here to motivate you.
My man, Lio Rush. Motivate me, Lio. Come on.
Okay.
Every night I come out here and I do my absolute best. It's not...
Baron Corbin has had a pretty topsy-turvy career in WWE. He was pretty dominant with NXT and he carried all that momentum to a Money in the Bank ladder match victory while on SmackDown, but then everything started to go wrong. Corbin became one of the few people to fail with his cash-in attempt, getting embarrassed in the process. Corbin started losing a lot more than he won until news broke that the Lone Wolf had mouthed off to backstage officials, which had landed him in hot water. The way things were going, it seemed like Corbin was going to be buried before eventually being released by the company, but luckily he managed to turn things around for himself. Today he's a former Raw general manager and is one of the few men to have beaten Kurt Angle at WrestleMania. Not bad for a guy who was about to be fired by WWE a couple of years ago. Titus O'Neil is a great brand ambassador for the company. He does a lot of charity and is genuinely a really likable guy. Unfortunately, that hasn't translated to a successful career between the ropes, as O'Neil has spent almost all of his career bouncing between the mid-card and the undercard. He was dangerously close to being fired after he grabbed Vince during a live segment. McMahon has always been a temperamental guy, but this was an overreaction. Even for him, McMahon was absolutely livid and reportedly wanted to fire O'Neil on the spot. Luckily, backstage officials calmed him down and O'Neil escaped with a lengthy suspension. Randy Orton is one of the biggest stars in WWE and has one of the coolest finishers in the company.
Amazing taste. He's calling for it. He's calling for it. Whoa! RKO!
But no one is above the wellness policy, right? Wrong. WWE rules state that 3 violations result in a superstar being released from their contract immediately, but instead of being fired, Orton was handed a 2-month suspension for his 3rd violation, the same punishment reserved for the 2nd violation. It is difficult to say why WWE went back on their word, but it probably has something to do with the fact that Orton has been a main event mainstay for a long time and losing him would have really hurt the company. Emma could easily have been a big star in the women's division, but WWE completely screwed up her transition to the main roster. She was dead in the water the moment she got paired with Santino Marella and never really recovered. The failed Emmeline experiment did nothing to salvage her career, but she still kept plugging away in WWE. Unfortunately, her career almost came to a premature end in 2014 after she accidentally shoplifted at Walmart. It was a pretty ridiculous decision because the WWE have stuck by their superstars that have done much worse, but luckily the company did come to its senses and reinstated her. That is before they released her. And these were 10 wrestlers WWE almost fired. I hope you're all having a great day. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you later in the next video.